Hello, Miss Sweeney in Trinity College. Anyone who from Trinity College, standing or past. There are people from Trinity College who've been replacing my emails with fabricated emails, and even sending emails that I never sent. And they attach me to writing fake letters, including on and off campuses. There's an officer who says his name is something, what is it, with Star Wars themed. It was like a fake name. It wasn't Father or something like that. It was something like the Force, something to do with Star Wars. Doesn't give the real name. The people he was doing it with, like a Joshua Stryker, I never had a conversation with him in my life. I was in his presence one time off campus, and one time I walked by him in a cafeteria, which was before that was like a week before that or a year before that or more. A girl who I don't know the name of, she had walked up to me and asked me if my father was in the mafia. I started to give her an answer. She walked away. I didn't see where she walked, in the cafeteria, which is also when I came out around the corner. No, there are people involved with uses of corners on campuses, off campuses, all kinds of ways through time where they tell you not to speak with strangers. For example, there's a Debbie Gold who had a father was a mayor of Wethersfield, and there's our other mayors and their kids, where they're in the background taking advice from lawyers to hide and plot, and the police are replacing what is actually recorded with fabricated audio and video, even when you call the police department, even with child offenders, even with the leaders of them force. So there's a Mr. Abruzzi who one time made me communicate with or made me do a maze that was given to me by Joe DeMoro. He told me to do the maze that Joe DeMoro gave me. Only conversation I had with him. And no, I was always a polite kid when I was in school, in grammar school especially. So when there were exceptions and exceptions, remember there might have been exceptions and exception nature and after a couple of instances, little kid stuff. All that little kid stuff has ties to these people. Were they using it for sequence shifts? The same people who were involved with the names that were involved, further, realized, unrealized, even though it's recorded, on the Ninth Circuit Court, which is right next to the World Trade Center towers right before the attack. And these are people who made confessions tied to the World Trade Center when I was a kid. So they presented, this was proven, was post-dated, they had post-dated documents that had been handed into the Ninth Circuit Court on time to be presented to the Ninth Circuit panel of judges right before the World Trade Center attack, which no one saw coming. So what they did was, from inside the court, post-date the documents. So then they were spreading lies about my father and about me. Since I was a kid, since before I was born, they were doing this against people. And they do it consciously, knowing by switching and forging names and attaching everyone to fake words and things like that, they can prevent people from being able to get a response, so they're going to ignore things. Meanwhile, outside of schools, they're stacking fabricated things. You call them predicate acts into databases. They're stacking sequence shifts into databases that are connected to ones they're affecting and having affected into even grammar school databases. Even I went to a kindergarten right before it closed, even into that database. They have houses next to it, and they have one kid that Ray Reynolds. They had made me interact with him in what is it called? Not grammar, but kindergarten. One time. So then these are people, they made exceptions afterwards, years later, for real quick instances. These are people involved with identity thefts and frauds. Now it's also with a... So the point is, there's a Joshua Stryker and he's one of the ones involved with federal crimes, with a whole bunch of federal criminals before they got caught. But also with police forms and people on and off the state judicial branch offices, and on and off Central Connecticut State University, and on and off Trinity College, that were since before the World Trade Center attack, and since they were spreading lies about me. And they were offensively doing it, making the instances to do that, so they could pretend I had anything to do with them in instances before that, for example, in relationship to sequence shifts. The same people doing that in courts, these are other court cases and stuff like that they were sequence shifting in also, including my own personal cases. They also attached, so in other words, there's a Dean Alford, or someone who was pretending to be him, because they have FBI and CIA. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in his defendant capacities, is one of the ones involved with the predicate acts on Trinity College and on CCSU against me. But this is by and through individuals, and where and how they brought the identities of campuses into it. You know, that's where they say, oh, we'll sue people. Because they need to lie about what happened before those instances. They need to use those instances to pretend we know people, preventing any responses, any legitimate communications. So these are people involved with child abuses, but the same houses and people were involved with elderly abuses, with elderly homes, not by accident. And there were uses of that, and with the locations next to those locations, like 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike. They had people that use my name to other people. I don't even know them. There are people with the name Soto involved with my town's police chief, Chief Cintron. Now he's also reportedly married to a Mazzucato family. I mean, through marriage of his daughter. So his daughter, I never had a class with, never had a conversation with, never was around her. I only seen pictures of her. These are also people involved with taking little pictures of little kids of various natures and using them online. They have the Facebook pages of Highcrest School, involved with a principal child offender. There was a Joshua Julian, also involved with this Joshua Stryker, through the same houses and names involved with him. Like Cololo families involved with Rocky Hill Police and Newington Police, associated with his family. There's a Officer Phelps, reportedly. And I never met him. In other words, and they have in other words, like 5 months ago, Wethersfield Police called my house and said, no, don't use the name Cololo anymore. They were lying about their motivations for that. You know, I called from town officers, someone called, a male. I called Wethersfield Police back. They said that was them, but they only have a female officer with the name Sullivan. And this guy said his name was Sullivan. There were also a whole bunch of people involved with the name Sullivan with Alina's Pizza, a tiki bar on Park Street, that is also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with people, with confessions from people that were in my 6th grade class when at the Principal Child Defenders High School. I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't know what they were speaking about, bringing up Park Street. I don't remember if that was afterwards. I remember they brought up the name Lance Cuddy, though. I remember that name because it's a unique name, and I didn't. This is what they do. They time when they tell people names. And the people that say the names, it makes it look like they're having a conversation. So you're not going to ask them what they're talking about. They even time it where there's no mean to if you want to. You find out later. So in other words, it's a whole bunch of ways tied to Washington, D.C. I had 2 speech class teachers that are involved with the predicate acts on my street now, that were involved with ones years ago, with people tied to the people on my street involved with this. But they're also forced to roles with it. So they're forcing fights between people, and they're exploiting where there are legitimate positive relationships between people, like neighbors, because they've been lying so long in cases to themselves and others, and with physical delusions, that they are manifest incapable of defending their logic, and us at the same time. Every modern nation, hundreds of nations at once. And they still compare themselves. You know, this is a trap for that. This is an identity racketeering method. So, in other words, we had all the answers that we needed. But anyway, there was a Joshua Stryker. He's involved with Wethersfield Police, pretending I sent emails to a school, where I called up the school to report what I caught them doing. And I also had them confirm online with a Rob Rodriguez, for example. I don't know. The only exceptions I know from real brief instances in the past are the same people involved with him now, with untimely deaths. On off Trinity College, one of them, but also he brought up roles with a Scalora family, who's also involved with various natures of police and Wethersfield Police, as people that mix with them, where they're forging and switching names. Their police corruption is not alone. And there was a police chief years ago who was involved with the same house with them, with the name Colello. There's also a Phil Colello that a Bob Chase recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed, was involved with him, with criminally making testimony in various natures of courts, involved with identity thefts and frauds with him, and physical delusions and drugs and medicines crimes with foreign and domestic doctors, and people with forensics locations. Also associated with a Joshua Julian, with the Facebook page of the Principal Child Defender's campus before he got caught. Off campus anyway. So these are also people with the various natures of courts that were criminally involved with him on the campus, and with my town's police chief. And they have fire departments involved through times, and their family members. Everyone misses the extent of everyone telling other people's names. And the tactics and methods used through. So there's like people within a Pruzzi family, and they have all online platforms, even the people that, in other words, they have regular YouTubers who use other people's names in the background. In relationship to, over the past 5 months, I haven't been able to get a response to this. These are the same people involved in other cities, involved with Wethersfield Interbranch, with predicate acts. Since before the World Trade Center attack, there are courts that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with their own, through their own. They were involved with the depositions of former director of the FBI and his co-defendants. His co-defendants had already been proven federal criminals in other cases, like pension thieves and stuff. And there were also ones, before they were caught, they were involved with union corruption and things that were also involved on the campuses, where the people involved with the unions were lying through the kids. So these are the same campuses involved in names. So they bring up the names, then they have people pretend passions and emotions. Because they have, these are people that call up the police with complaints, because they maintain they maintain the police acting and then defending their actions as fact sheet in nature, where they can't defend that in the future or in the present, and us at the same time from what exploits that. Because they have overt criminal enterprises, also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with the locations next to the high schools, next to the Trinity College, and next to CCSU through time, with Zion Street, a number of ways, and with the other streets around Trinity College, associated with many tied to a Joe Aiello, who also recorded, confessed, and then confirmed roles with the DeMoros. There's more than one DeMoro with the name Joe DeMoro. And these are various police forms involved with this Joshua Stryker, with the Dean Alford, and they switched the Dean Alford's name online. And they confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed they lied to Elizabeth about me. I don't want to use her name online. And see, that they know that. And now these are people that use the lie to their girlfriends. They spread lies to their girlfriends individually, grouped and together. And they have it like an identity theft or fraud. So the other boys, they're going to think, oh, that's just natural they're just trying to, because they know that they're going to see those girls before they do, or they know they're not going to ever see them. And that's how they do that. In other words, they know where you're going to walk after your classroom. All that was set up, which is not a theory. That's tied to the people who are involved with these excuses and forging names, switching names, officers, Wethersfield Police. Now, these are also the people on Trinity College. They have roles with the methods where they're attaching me to fake audio and video transcripts to replace actually recorded audio and video, and they're totally making it up because they attached me to fake locations as a kid too. There's a Judge Smith and there's a Jennifer Smith. And there are people near the Cove in Old Wethersfield. I don't know. I never had a conversation with Jennifer in my life. These are, in other words, these are people involved with Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, who are involved now as adults criminally through there, and with Washington D.C., where they have the right to be lied and to do crimes, where they don't have it, but they've been pretending it's only their right. This is where and how that we have, so I'm not be getting a response to pretend they don't understand me. You guys asked me to come in and communicate with you. They brought up Elizabeth's name. They lied to her about me. That's what they said, basically. Then I went back that wasn't the only thing that they confessed, and pretending it wasn't a confession. They're pretending their motivations were other than they were. So now, since before the World Trade Center attack, I've been asking to report what is actually recorded. There are Hartford courts, and there are Middletown courts, and there are New Britain Superior